I feel that speaking and listening shouldn't be seen as a tag-on, it should be integral to every lesson. We've incorporated it into all our schemes of work at Key Stage 3, with formal assessments taking a very important part, and we're seeing the results at GCSE improve dramatically.
A great idea for making links between books and real life.
Homeless roleplay.
A lesson that I do with my Year 9s that works well for speaking and listening is based on Robert Swindle's book Stone Cold, which looks at the issues of the homeless. And a really nice way into the lesson is a tableau where you forewarn a couple of pupils and they take on the role as the homeless people, and then pupils in pairs brainstorm some ideas around why they might be homeless and what feelings are evoked from looking at the scene. On your desk in front of you, you've got a whiteboard, and in your pairs, I'd like you to think about some ideas that you have in looking at this scene about the homeless. I asked them to come up with 3 to 5 words that they feel when they look at that picture of homeless people. And I also like to put a thesaurus on their desk so they think about extending their vocabulary when they're looking at this tableau and putting their words down, which we then feed back to class.
We thought they looked quite depressed and abandoned.
They look scared.
Yeah.
Well, we thought that because they're all alone, they don't even really trust anyone.
The next part of the lesson, each pupil has half a sentence. They get up and they have to actively find the other half of their sentence to make a complete sentence. You've got to talk to each other about whether it matches and why it matches, okay? And then we're going to explore it a bit further.
I've got selling the big issue is good because...
Oh no, I've got my mum kicked me out because...
Oh, okay. What have you got?
I think it's really important to get pupils out of their seats and speaking and listening, because then they are not passive listeners, they are actually having to be very active and talking about why they've found each other and why that sentence goes together. It means that every single pupil in that lesson is involved.
Selling the big issue is good because...
It's a way of making a small amount of money each week which buys food.
Yeah, that goes together.
Yeah.
Great, that's good. Well done for finding each other. Sit yourselves down. Good. After they've found their pair, the 2 halves of the sentence, they then sit back down. They read out their sentences and we explore some of the issues regarding this.
I get ill quite often through
Always being cold and wet and never really drying out.
Good. Can you imagine that day after day on the streets? I use the props of a hat and a microphone in my lesson because it actually promotes a really fun atmosphere, a safe and secure atmosphere, which is integral to good speaking and listening. This activity lends itself very nicely to the third activity, which is Socratic talk. They're actually getting an idea about the real issues as to why people are on the streets. So, you're a group of 3. Okay, so decide between you, who's the homeless person, who's the questioner, who's the listener. You've got somebody who's listening actively and they're actually having to award marks on the answers given by the homeless person.
It was the people that got me into the drugs. They were all doing, and I thought maybe it would be cool if I'd done it as well. But
So you gave in to peer pressure?
Kind of, yeah. I think that's what.
So we have one person who's got very fixed ideas on homeless people, and then you've got somebody who's got to answer that in regards to being a homeless person, and then you've got the third person who's the listener, who's awarding marks based on a sheet I've given them as an example of what a good answer is, an average answer, and a poor answer.
Do you do drugs or alcohol? It's not my fault I drink. I have to forget what happened.
At the end of the lessons, I get them in pairs to collaborate on a poem about the homeless, thinking about all the issues they've already covered. They then present these poems to the class. So you've got to think about what when you perform. When you perform something to the class, do you read it like this so everybody wants to just go to sleep? How do you do it? Yes?
You need lots of expression in your voice.
Good girl, you need lots of expression in your voice. Well done.
I sit there all day and all night long. I am abandoned and have nowhere to go. I'm trapped in my own situation, even though I'm free.
With the speaking and listening embedded throughout the lesson, with them working on the activity towards a dramatic performance, I've always been thrilled with the quality of the work they've produced and the really thoughtful and emotional pieces of work that are presented to the class.
A great idea for introducing Wilfred Owen.
War correspondent group work.
Bent double, like old beggars under sacks. Knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we curse through sludge.
One of the ways that I found that's very effective in engaging students in a lively but very emotive way is through a dramatisation of Wilfred Owen's Dulce Decorum Est.
Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshod.
So prior to the lesson where they perform the drama, I meet with about 5 students and we explore how they could create a drama that links with the language of the poem. And we have a couple of practices.
Gas! Gas!
It's not difficult getting it together. I beg and borrow if I can get helmets, gas masks, and the students can bring in their own clothes to dress up for the performance.
Dim through the misty panes and thick green light.
The first time I tried this, I was quite nervous and thought it could go either way. And I think sometimes you have to be brave and try different things with students.
Dulce et decorum est per patria mori. It's sweet and honourable to die for one's country.
Each year that students have performed Dulce Decorum Est in front of their peers, I loved the reaction of the rest of the group.
I think it's quite upsetting, the fact that their friends of war die and then they just have to leave them behind.
Like, if someone dies in front of them, they have to carry on and not think that someone's died. Like, they can't just go help them, they have to just carry on and keep going.
Wilfred Owen shows us the actual reality of the war. It's not all easy and stuff, but it's actually devastating at times.
Following on from their immediate responses after the drama, I set them up as war correspondents, so they're going to research sections of the poem, feeding off each other's ideas.
When it says that they're drunk with fatigue, it's like they're so tired they have no idea what they're doing. It's like if you've been drinking alcohol and you don't know what you're doing.
With the focus on being a war correspondent, they're not thinking they're students in a classroom analysing the language. They can take on a role and they're researching for a news report that they feed back towards the end of the lesson when they've gathered as much information as they can from each other. So still at this stage, no writing takes place, no note-taking. And with focused questions, they build on each other's ideas, develop their understanding through the ideas of their peers, and perhaps engage with things that they hadn't noticed themselves.
Why do you think the soldiers flung him in the wagon? They've got to get away from wherever they are. If they wait 1 minute, then they're just going to get bombed.
And you go, why you bend double like old beggars under sacks? Yeah.
So for this lesson, my ultimate aim is, as war correspondents, the students are engaging with the language of the poem for the first time. They haven't seen this poem before. They're sharing their ideas, but they're presenting it through a medium that distracts them from the fact that they're analysing poetry.
Hello and welcome. We're live from the trenches.
What kind of atmosphere is in the war?
Well, it's terrifying, isn't it? Like, people shouting and you just don't know what's happening.
We heard Gas shouting at us, so we all were stumbling and fumbling for our masks, but he didn't get one, unfortunately.
What's the atmosphere at the moment?
Dark, depressing, it's horrible.
Part of my assessment for learning on how the students have understood and engaged with the poetry from this lesson, we have a fronter system at schools, an intranet, where we can have online discussions like Facebook, MySpace, Twittering, and the students have a nice way of commenting on what they've learned, and I can monitor the discussions that are going on.
A great idea for exploring tone and expression.
Creating group stories.
Year 7s don't realise what a key skill speaking and listening actually is, because it's a skill that we take for granted, that we use in everyday life. A lesson that works really well for me with my Year 7s is that we make group stories. The first thing we do is they are given a sequence of speaking and listening levels from levels 3 to 7, and they have to define what is a level 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7.
I think maybe that one goes there.
Okay.
Because it is quite difficult to engage the attention of someone.
Yeah.
That one level 4, and then that one level 3.
They get to see what skills they need to build upon getting up to a level 7, and it helps them focus on key words with what they need to do in order to improve. Now, this leads us on to our next task. As you can see, you have a sheet in front of you. Can you all see this? Yeah. What I would like you to do is, working with your partner, one of you is going to be the director, And the other is going to say the speech aloud. I use 2 extracts. One extract's the incantation of the witch's spell from Macbeth, and I also use an extract from the Winston Churchill speech. It helps them, really pick out what's a key word and why. Why should I express this word and, maybe use a softer tone for another, so it gets them thinking.
Fill it up with funny snakes in a cauldron boiling bait.
It should be like more mysterious. It's like you're a witch and you're making like a bad potion or something.
For the main part of the lesson, I divide them into groups of 3 to make up a group story. One of you is going to be in charge of the beginning, the other the middle, and the other person at the end. You're not allowed to write. You have to speak and listen to each other. They're giving a black bag, which one person from the group of 3 has to choose an item from. I put anything that I can find around the house. I use a dress, a bottle, anything that can, be used to inspire them in order to make up a group story. Ooh! Ooh! What is it? It's a wig!
But then she wanted to change into some comfortable clothes and she left it in the changing room. And then somebody stole it.
One day she was searching the street for scraps of food when she saw the silver shoes glistening in the sun. Next thing she knew, she heard a mouse squeak. Suddenly, she realised she was a filthy rodent.
Pause there, okay, so what is she doing well and how could she improve?
It could be like a fairy tale, like someone who had hair like that, sort of thing.
Yeah. So it could go like, she had a hairdresser in the salon and she was bored of her hair, so she cut it off. And then next day, she woke up and she found it lying next to her.
Your vocabulary, excellent. One day, glistening shoes, very nice, yeah? But I don't see any expression, especially when you said suddenly, right? Speed your pace up and, know when to speed up. So suddenly, pause and then continue, okay? So keep on practicing, guys. To ensure that there was active listening, I asked the pupils to use the mark scheme and, assess their peers, what they did well and what they needed to do in order to improve.
It was a small, lazy hotel off Route 66. An old man in a black tie perched at his desk, and then he suddenly heard a ring on the door.
It definitely helps them seeing their peers up there because they think, ooh, that's what I need to do when I need to go up.
They definitely did level 4 then. They did engage my attention, because I thought it was quite good.
So using the mark scheme, they're able to identify, like, yes, that's varying, variety of tone of voice. Yeah, that's using, being very confident, and then they're able to go up and perform it and hopefully do as well, if not better.
They talked confidently and they used a lot of facial expression, especially Ben. And I thought the way that he spoke it made it more interesting.
Begin as you mean to go on. And that's why we start with Year 7, because if they get these skills now, there's no reason why they shouldn't be brilliant, when it's needed for their GCSEs and for life communication skills. We all need it.